Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? Colleague handled a case where money was not an issue but the kids were. Neither parent wanted them. My parents always told each other when they were fighting that if they got divorced the other had to keep me and my brothers. On a positive note, you kept your parents' marriage together. This is more sad than outrageous, but some of my colleagues specialize in elder law and more people than you'd think get divorced on paper in the US in order to receive Medicare benefits without having to lose their home. My douche cousin told his wife she had 3 chances to give him a son. Daughter was born first. Strike 1. Son was born second. Then they find out the boy can't eat gluten. So my cousin divorced her and has made 0 effort to see his kids. Wait, so just because the kid can't eat gluten he doesn't want to see him? Whoa. Pathetic. It's not even a big problem. I was a legal assistant when this case came in, but this lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. I dated a girl that didn't speak to me for a day or 2 because I got her an iPad instead of jewelry. Her reassuring was, because I could just use yours. I am glad that relationship is over. Seems like an expensive way to find out your girlfriend is a selfish jerk. My grandfather's brother was a judge who presided over state issue marriages from time to time. One couple he married returned 6 months later to confirm the wedding and end their trial marriage. When he thusly informed them that there was no such thing and that they had been married for 6 months they subsequently broke up. That sounds nutty, but if you believed your so when they told you trial marriages were a real thing, the betrayal could very easily end the marriage. She was kidnapped in Mexico and he refused to pay ransom. Eventually her family managed to pay and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous as in petty but outrageous as how absurd that is. Honey, I love you, but we agreed to save up money so we can purchase a house. Your ransom would really set us back. I don't really think I can add a ransom line item to this month's budget. Everything is already super tight. Now honey, you know the family policy. We do not negotiate with terrorists. My 90-year-old client, the husband, and his son retained me to initiate divorce proceedings with his 88-year-old wife. They'd been married 60 years. The wife had recently taken to beating him with his own cane because their daughter poisoned her into thinking he was hiding money from them. The battle came down to husband and son versus wife and daughter. At their first court appearance, my client showed up in an old 1950s style pinstripe suit and fedora. He was a farmer his whole life, and this was clearly the only suit he owned. He was such a meek and lovely old gentleman. I had to pass my client on to a new lawyer midway through the proceedings because I accepted a job in a different country, but I understand the divorce was eventually granted. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for 2 reasons. 1. He did not have enough hair on his chest. 2. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Shit, yeah, it would have been embarrassing to show up late at a pool party and your man not having a decent chest bush. A luscious mane of hair from my chest pubes down to my ball fro. I didn't like her anymore 2 days after being married. In sickness and in heath. Till disinterest do you part. I had some friends get divorced because she legit hated Dale Earnhardt and he legit hated Jeff Gordon. NASCAR fans from 1995 to 2005 would not consider this a petty issue. He had an argument with the new in-laws during the wedding and moved out at around 5 AM during the first night. Knew a couple who were married for only a few hours. Bride's side of the family was being disrespectful to the groom's side at the reception. He brought us up on the way to the hotel after the reception which caused a heated argument. Bride calls up her family who arrived to the hotel and start a fight with the groom in the lobby. Groom called his side of the family as well. Hotel lobby turned into a screaming match field and they separated there and then. It was such an extravagant wedding. What a waste. Failed exorcisms. Client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife 1. had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medication she was taking was enabling the devil to hide inside her. And 3. The only proper recourse was to try various methods of exorcism. He would hide her meds until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. This included sweating it out, put under blankets while incapacitated and locked in a room full of space heater, freezing it out, pretty much the reverse with AC, fans, and bags of ice, surprising it out. He would jump out and scare her like it was the hiccups, but instead of yelling boo he would recite the Lord's Prayer or Psalms. The final straw was that he tried to surprise it out of her by pushing her down the stairs when they were heading out for dinner. Note, this guy was some type of executive and they still went out to dinner after the stairs incident. She asked for the divorce at an Applebee's that night. I have often tried to picture that conversation, as she was adamant that he was a total sweetheart and never acted out of malice or anger. Wasn't the reason but did happen during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap they were fucking Tupperware. I dropped into court to visit a family friend who was a judge and had quite a treat. A wealthy area farmer and his wife were in court that day fighting about possessions assets. The judge had had enough. After briefly reviewing the history of their case he offered the couple one last opportunity to retire to a conference room and come to an agreement. Both refused. Their lawyers were clearly as weary as the judge. The judge then asks each party which room in their house was their favorite room. She picked the kitchen and he picked his gun room. The judge then informed them that because the matter had dragged on for so long with both behaving like children he was going to decide the matter of the property. She was awarded everything in the kitchen and he the gun room. Everything else was to be sold at auction with the profits equally divided. Then the judge told them, "Now neither of you is happy, right?" They clearly were not. Haha. Honestly thought the judge was gonna give the wife the gun room and the husband the kitchen. Man, I was going to say that our client was served divorce papers for sending a couple $100,000 overseas in a scam. But damn, you guys got better ones than me. Damn. You are too stupid to stay married to. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client, shocker, started dating another woman and methinks began using hard drugs. He used a loot of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school co-workers were his best chums, and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked shit about him whilst he was there. Was only when he recorded a conversation whilst they were there and got it translated he found out what was going on. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I shit you not. A recently married couple of 2 years broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw connection between the dog and future children. Not a divorce lawyer, but I had a friend whose parents divorced for irreconcilable differences over time spent playing EverQuest. My client was the outrageous one, so my heart went out to his poor wife. He had OCD which manifested primarily financially, so he made their lives a penny pinching hell. Examples: he was obsessed with avoiding unnecessary driving, wear and tear on the car, gas expenses, so he cut the whole family's hair at home and never let them eat at a restaurant or go to the movies. Weirdest of all, he kept one toilet paper roll on him at all times and you had to get one square from him before you could go to the bathroom. He never gave more than one square. Wife finally got fed up and left him when 1. He gave her bangs during an in-home haircut, and 2. Their daughter was so traumatized by the toilet paper thing they couldn't potty train her. Also, he hated paying his divorce lawyer bill. He was also an old-fashioned mega Catholic who considered divorce a deadly sin. He viewed my whole job as an unnecessary and sinful expense. Holy shit, 1 square? 1 fucking square? Does he shit rabbit pellets? That guy is a monster. Yeah, that got me. 2. If I was the wife, I'd start wiping myself with his shirts or something. He doesn't like it? Well, give me some fucking toilet paper, then. I am a lawyer that handles quite a few divorces, among other things, and I've seen all sorts of reasons for marriages ending. The only thing that is consistently true and relevant to this question is that it is never for just one reason, and it is never one-sided. In fact, I've started telling potential clients in our initial interview that I am well aware that I am going to uncover some dirt on my client in the process, not to scare them, but to put their mind to ease that I've seen worse. The fact that you haven't been 100% an angel up to this point doesn't scare me, and I'd rather find out about it from my client beforehand than later on from their spouse at the worst possible moment. All this is just to say that when you hear about people divorcing over one stupid argument or mistake, usually that's just the straw that broke the camel's back. That said, some of the lighter straws I've seen include a guy who is 100% convinced that his wife, our client, is actually a lesbian in love with his sister and just using him as a cover. But he also claims she is having sex with me to pay for her legal fees, and with every male whose phone number is in her call history. A woman who is divorcing my client because he was too sad after his father died last year. My client had to break down her door to get his father's ashes a few weeks after he left the house, and she refused to let him back in or give them to him. And a woman who claims my client was emotionally abusive towards her because he refused to yell at her and sat in silence ignoring her when she screamed at him. He has this recorded, time-stamped for the dates and times she insists the incidents occurred, and she's listened to them and his complete silence as she goes on tirades and insists this proves her point that he was emotionally distant and abusive. Staff attorney for a judge. Not a divorce but a custody modification hearing. Ex-wife wanted sole L&P custody of the kids because the ex-husband was spending all his money on a palm reader psychic and refused to pay child support. On cross, ex-wife's attorney got him to admit that he was spending all his discretionary income on this psychic. He said he had spent over $5,000 on readings and other services there. Judges frequently chime in with questions in domestic matters, so my judge asked why he was not paying support as his divorce decree required. His explanation was the psychic could read that his children were provided for without his money, and 2, he would be able to repay the ex when he takes the children to Mexico permanently to seek great riches there. Which my judge read as my psychic told me to kidnap my kids. TL. DR. Deadbeat ex-husband spent all his money on a psychic rather than child support. Told the judge he intended to kidnap his children. Not me, but a friend. My mum has divorced her husband because his mother still coddled him at age 40, with his consent. They lived with his mother, common in Asia. By coddle I mean that she would walk straight into their room after his shower and powder his back for him. They couldn't lock their bedroom door because his mother would come in as and when she wanted. If they locked the door, she would knock repeatedly asking what they were doing. LOL, what would they be possibly doing? Playing poker? He was frustrated by her hoarding. She was frustrated by his utter uselessness. He filed for divorce, and she was my client. Her prized possession was a room or two full of scrapbooking materials. His prized possession was a yard full of junk cars that he never worked on. They had no children and no real assets. They hated each other more than any two people I'd ever met, and the only terms they would agree to were these: he gets the scrapbooking stuff, and she gets the cars. My client also took the house, as he had no income and didn't want it anyway. It was the shortest divorce decree I ever drafted. I intentionally squeezed it onto one page, and the judge and I had a good laugh over it. Once the decree was signed and filed, she hauled all the scrapbooking stuff to the yard, and he removed it to the dump. She then called a junk shop I referred her to and had all of his cars removed from the yard. Edit. These two also fought over a toilet brush, as he didn't want to have to buy one when he moved out. I politely instructed my client to give him the goddamn toilet brush.